Well, we're starting with the machine upside down. We're going to pull the gearbox cover off. It has a pry open spot right here. Seeing grease is a good thing. You want to see some grease. This is our chance to do a little clean out and re-greasing also. Remove the top link. Set it someplace clean. We got 2 screws to remove to release the cutter bar. And we're free, so be careful. We still got to release down here at this lower link. The bar will come off of the lower link. We'll get all this cleaned up and wiped down, and we'll re-grease it before we reassemble it. There's a part missing right here. There's a little doodad that locks in right here. I found the little doodad. It was stuck to the cover. That's the part that goes over there. I think they call it a bushing or something. Be careful wiping. These can oscillate, so be careful how you hold them. We'll need to reuse this support link right here and the bushings underneath. Make sure you don't lose your bushings and don't lose your support link. We're going to disassemble the bar by removing these 6 screws. 8mm wrench at the bottom. And there's a bushing below each screw. Some of these guys had so much crap in there it looked like a perfect square came out, but it's actually just a round bushing. There it is. Here's one that looks like a square. That's all crud. The bushing is actually just the round piece. Now we can separate the bars. Top piece and bottom piece. And then this is the guide it sits on. And then this is the thigh guard. The plastic is a thigh guard. When you hit your thigh, it keeps you from pinching. You can pop the thigh guard off if you want to and clean this, but we don't really have to do anything but wipe this bar down. This is just the mount guide. We don't do any sharpening or service, just cleaning and maintenance here. We're going to remove the slide spacer and clean out underneath it. Got a bunch of crap in there. We may as well clean all this out while we're in here. This is years of bar oil buildup is what this is. The top bar and bottom bar should be identical. We got the drive tangs down here lining up the same way, so we're going to put them right on top of each other. And I believe that is identical. And for this assignment we are going to compare the costs between an aftermarket set of blades and sharpening the original set. This will be a educational demonstration. Start by lining up the screw holes. Put the bushing back over the screw hole. Screw. The next one utilizes the stiffener we took off the other bar. This one we got to slide the bushing in underneath. Put the support on. We'll get the screw started. We got to mount it to here, so we have to undo this guy. I can see there is a bushing in there. You got to get the torque just right on these, so you'll have to double check these are torqued correctly. And these should all be Loctited in. Put the top connecting link back in, and then rotate the gears and it'll fall right in. The original set had washers sitting up top through here. The aftermarket doesn't. I'm going to use a multi-purpose gear and bearing grease. If you over grease it, it'll just come out the front. It's really not that bad, and then you can just wipe it off the front. If you put too much grease in, it always works its way out this way. There's one more piece that always sticks to the top of the cover, and that's this little shim keeper. The bushing doodad goes back in here, and the cover. Make sure you got a good gasket or a decent gasket. The top side looks really nice. The top profile of the cutter head. Underneath is a different story. Let me see if I can get you in here real close. Alright, so here's the top, here's the bottom. This has the angled profile. This side should be perfectly flat. Let me show you the issue, if I can get in here far enough. There's about a 30-second of where it is no longer perfectly flat across the tooth. So if we want to do a real good sharpening job, we're going to have to take this back to the end of that profile right there. And that'll give us the best cut possible. Normally what a person would do is take their straight edge, hold it along the teeth, shine a flashlight behind it and look for some rounding on the bottom of the tooth. We don't need to do that here because the rounding is extremely obvious. Well, here's our flashlight method. You can probably see the light coming out of the tip there, but this is so extreme you don't need to use the flashlight method. As I slide the razor blade down, you can see how extreme that is. That much is going to have to get ground off in order to get the factory cut quality back. That's pretty extreme. It's not going to leave a whole lot of tooth left. This tooth needs a certain amount of thickness so it doesn't snap in half during use. By the time we take this side back and this other side back, it will leave this tooth thinner. If we put the two bar halves together, we can examine the cutter profile this way as well. Well, here I got the one tooth in the vise and the vise grip pliers on it. We're going to get in here real close. Look at that bottom, is way rounded over. That's in pretty bad shape. We're going to have to take off a lot of material to get that down flush. Well, I found us an example of what happens when these blades dull and the underside starts to round over. This one stem didn't get fully clipped. Let's get in here real close. You can see all the way up this thing, it's been nicked several times. It's gone through the blade about 20 times and didn't get cut. And that's because the bottom side is rounding over. You can see all those clip marks right there. Now let me show you what it does inside the blade. As the blade attempts to cut, it doesn't cut, it just folds it over like that. It folds it in, and it keeps moving up the stem, folding it under, moving up, folding it under, and it never gets to cut. All it does is rub it all the way up. It pinches in between and folds over. You don't get a true cut, you just get a fold over. Once the bottom begins to round over, you gotta service it. Well, my grinder gets moved a lot, so I got it mounted up here on the big boy stand with the wheels. You can lean it back, wheel it wherever you need to go, and go to sharpening town. I like it up here close to head height so I can see it when I'm working. You're gonna take your wing nut and washer off, pull your carriage bolt out. This was so seized in here that when I pulled it out, I shattered the wheel with the back of my hand. To work the table out, I cleaned it up real nice so it comes out now. In the box you get the cutter bar table mount, the guide for the single-sided hedger blades, and a grinding wheel. No instructions at all, so hopefully you saved your grinder manual and the 2 charts it comes with. These are the big full-page charts. There's 2 of them you need. On the new table, we'll take the wing nut and washer off. When my chain table came off, the peg was stuck in here. I had to take this piece to the vise and pound the peg back out and reinsert the peg back into the chain table. Drop the table on, align the hole in the peg, put the carriage bolt back in, followed by the washer and nut. Release the guard and release the wheel. Real big grip nut. Wow, that was stuck on there. And the wheel. Well, you're going to have the chart to figure some of this out. Here's why. As we look at the chart, we'll find our model, the HS81. We'll follow it over here. Here's our three angles, A, B, and C. We'll look up here on the picture. A, that's the whole housing tilt. B, that's your in and out on your slider. C, that's your table angle. A gets set at -10, B gets set at 0, C gets positive and -45. You also got to know which wheel number to use. They give you the part number to use for the hedgers. Here's the wheel that came in the kit. It's showing 3/8 pitch, 0.325 for a chain. Gives you the part number 5203 750 7010. And when we look down here at the part number for the hedgers, 5203 750 7010. Same wheel, same part number. So this wheel is used for chain and the hedgers. These wheels have a real unique profile. If we look right here, we can see the profile. There's a real specific radius, and that radius has to be set right or it won't cut right. You can see the softest of the radius points to the machine. Here's a picture of the shaft that you're mounting it on right there. So the machine would be right here where my finger is. That soft radius has to point into the machine. The wheel radius measurement is to match this radius right here at the bottom of the cutter tooth. As the grinding wheel comes down, it should match that bottom profile. That's why the grinding wheel radius is important, to match that bottom profile. Really hard to see, but this side over here has that soft profile. I'm not sure you're going to even be able to see it through the camera. Put our wheel on the right direction, big washer and big grip nut. See if we can get you way in for the adjustment. Right now we're at positive 30 for chain. We got to come all the way over here to negative 10. Real hard to see the line, but the line is right here. They could have done a better job marking where the 0 is on this. The B adjustment will bring to 0, and we'll tighten the wing nut underneath. And then number C is up here on this gauge, positive and negative 45. Here's an example of cutting angle A. Cutting angle A is 10 degrees off of 0. You can see the square is 0. We want to match this angle of the tooth. We want the grinding wheel to come down at negative 10 degrees on the gauge. We don't want 0. 0 is at the square. We want negative 10. That's angle A. The B scale sets at 0 for this. 0 means the grinding wheel comes down at center, as opposed to, we'll use a sawtooth here, if we go to negative 15, the wheel will be cutting in front of the workpiece. If we go to positive 15, it moves our workpiece forward, and now we're cutting behind the workpiece. For the hedger blades we use 0, saw teeth go to positive and negative. You can see when the scale is set to 0 here, the grinding wheel comes down center into the workpiece here. Measurement C is 45 degrees. That's the angle of the cutter profile. It's grounded at a 45 degree angle right here. The grinding wheel comes down parallel at 45 degrees to match the profile of the cutter. Well, right out of the box we got an issue. We're all the way open, but these blades will not fit in here. There is no way we're going to get those blades to fit in there. What we're going to have to do is loosen these nuts and back these off a little bit more. Give us a little bit more clearance to fit that inside there. Take two number 17s. Give it about a 1 turn. We're in. We fit. We'll snug up the nuts right there. Well, I got issue number 1 solved, and that's getting the table mount wide enough to accept the damn bar. So that part's solved. We'll take this pawl and put it back around. You can see the motion. Left is free. We can slide the bar when we take our pawl out of the way. You can slide the bar, and when you go to tighten, it tightens the clamp on the bar here, and it kicks the little stop out of the way. Release, stops back in, so when we slide it over it hits the next tooth, and then tighten and it kicks it out. Now we can sharpen. Here's how I got the tension set. When it's all the way to the left, all the way loose, we get real easy bar sliding. You can see how easy that slides. As I begin to tighten it, it still slides right there. Tighten it a little bit more. Still sliding. A little more. She's snugging up pretty good right there. A little more. It'll no longer slide. A little more. We're very snug. And a little more locks it 100% and clicks the stopper out. That bar isn't going nowhere. That bar is super tight in there. So you release it, you slide it up to the next tooth, you lock it, and it removes the stopper. We'll take a real close look here now at how the wheel comes down on the tooth, and we can see we're way off. Jesus. So we got a second adjustment to do before we can use this. The adjustment we're looking for is on our stopper. You can see how it's butted up against the tooth, and that gap right there is what we need to take out. Let's try tightening in the nut, and it'll increase our stopper, and that tooth will slide over farther. Well, I tighten that guy in all the way right there. I slide it all the way to the stop, right there, tight to the stop, turn the knob, And now we'll see how close we come down. There's still quite a gap there. We're still way too far away to even use this thing. They gave us one more adjustment right here. We can slide this over. And if that doesn't do it, we're going to have to strategically bend this piece to give us a little bit more space. Well, we're all the way over right here, and we're all the way over right here. Let's see if that did it. We'll slide up to the stop. We'll turn the knob, and we'll see how close we come. Yes, it touches, folks. This thing is going to work. You can see as time goes by, we're going to shorten that tooth back farther and farther. So the way this machine is set up, you're not going to be able to sharpen any much farther past that, because we're maxed all the way out and we're maxed all the way out, and that's as far over as it goes. And that's about where we need to sharpen in order to get a better quality cut on this bar. Well, we're all set up, so let's see how this goes. I did a test pass at -10, and you can see we're only hitting the top of the tooth here. We didn't even touch the very bottom of the tooth. As we came down, we hit the top, but not the bottom. So -10 is too extreme. We need to back that off. Let's try -9 and see if it matches the whole profile of the tooth. We're right on 0 there. Boy, we're right on the -10 there. You can barely see the marker. I wish they made that better. And then up here we're right on the 45. So our gauge says we're perfect, but something's not quite right. Well, the first side went pretty well. I took these down in 2 passes. If you do it in 1 pass, you'll get bluing. You'll overheat the tooth and you'll get noticeable bluing, a noticeable darkening of the steel. You want to avoid that. We're going to take the blades out. We're going to turn 180 degrees. And we're going to go to the opposite 45 degrees on the other side. This will let us come down and sharpen the other tooth and maintain the same side on our radiused wheel here. We want to make sure we're cutting on the same side, as this wheel has a specific purpose radius at the tip here. Each time you do a row of cutters, you have to adjust the stop. And always check a couple teeth. Don't just rely off your very first setting. Check 2 or 3 teeth. Well, here's the cutter comparison. You can see how much smaller we brought these teeth down compared to the original teeth. You can see how wide it is up here at the top of the tooth and how narrow it is. It comes to a point where we sharpened, and the old bar is still flat at the tip of the tooth. A flat profile has to be maintained at the tip of the tooth. You can't bring these all the way to a point. If you do, you'll bust your tooth off or bend your tooth. If this comes all the way to a point, it's real common to see these curl up and bend up, if not snap off the top ½ inch. They'll bust off right about here if you sharpen too much more. So this is about the limit of the machine to sharpen. I got the stopper adjusted all the way in. It can't go in anymore. So this is the true limit of sharpening. Well, you can see a little bit of a leftover burr here. The man fingernail will take that off. But I can still feel a little bit of a burr on the underside. So we might just drag us a file on the backside here. But this will probably come off on your first use. So if you didn't drag a file on the backside, I'm still going to be your friend and have a beer with you. But a quick pass with a file on the back is probably a dang good idea. Make sure you have a semi-fine file here. We're just trying to remove the burr, not file down steel. We'll keep it super flat to the bar and a real gentle push stroke. And then we'll flip it and we'll come back the opposite way. We'll do that to both halves. Well, this is a heck of a lot better tooth profile. Check this out. This looks really nice. It's back to perfectly square, perfectly flat. What a huge improvement that is. Here's an example of the excessive grinding that was done. Proper maintenance would have taken this back nice and consistent. Your first sharpening would have been there, your second sharpening, your third sharpening, and your fourth sharpening. But when you do it all in one shot, you end up looking like this. The classic sign of lack of maintenance. A well-maintained blade, this would have been nice and smooth. Well, I got the bar put back together, and those teeth are pretty dang tight together. That gap is gone. We really did a good job. It closed that gap right back up. They're 100% touching now. There's no longer any rounding on the bottom side of those teeth. They sit completely flat together now. That's a pretty dang quality job. Well, I asked the maintenance crew to find us the hardest thing to hedge around here, and they said the living wall is the most difficult because the blades of grass get stuck in between the hedger blades and won't cut. So let's see how our sharpening job did compared to an aftermarket set of blades. Well, it got us pretty dang flat. It cut really nice. Really had a nice scissor action, real smooth, real nice shear. Nothing seemed to get stuck in between the blades. Everything did indeed cut. It did a pretty nice job on the stringy stuff. This stuff is indeed stringy, very fibery, very thin, very hard to cut. You almost need to hit this with a weed eater instead of a hedger. Well, here's that aftermarket bar. I told that same maintenance crew to use the heck out of it. This is 2 full days of use, and you can see the wear. They did indeed use the heck out of it. They cut back some heavy stuff. They use them to knock back shrubs a lot more aggressive than most people would, so this is pretty harsh on these things. Well, the OEM blades cut just fine, and you diehards will be happy, because I would have to say the OEM blades cut better than the aftermarket blades. It's a pretty good real-world test right there. Well, I was able to scrounge up another machine, and I can already tell this is probably too far gone to mount in the USG. I don't think we'll have any luck. It's not even going to touch the teeth. But how about the old-fashioned angle grinder method? Would the angle grinder restore any cut quality? Let's sharpen this row first. We can give ourselves a little more room. That's better. Well, using the thin grinding wheel, it was pretty darn easy to follow the contour. This wasn't difficult at all. Let's see how we did on the underside. Well, here's the back of an unsharpened tooth. Same issue, heavy rounding. I can feel it's rounded over. Let's go over to the sharpened tooth. That's improved. That's an improvement. I can still see rounding down here at the bottom. I didn't quite get enough at the bottom, but the top half I did well on. We need to give this about twice as much time on the grinder, and that should help. It feels sharper, and that's a heck of a lot faster than the bench grinder. Well, it's fast, folks. 15 minutes I knocked the whole thing out. Gave it a little bit of the bluey treatment in a few spots. Let's take a look at it from this way. You can see the shiny profile. It's not difficult at all to follow the profile. The grinder fits right in there. Don't use a grinding wheel, use a thick cutoff wheel, and you can knock it right out. Take a look from this side. It really had no problem following. It followed just fine. It had the same little burr, so I took the file to it like this. It took the burr right off. But it did a pretty good job. It took most of that rounding right off. That's a heck of a lot better, that's for sure. When you slide your finger in here, you can feel it's a lot sharper. This is dangerous now. So this is a good improvement. One of the benefits of this machine is its ability to get things consistent. On saw chain, that's critical. Everything needs to be consistent. Each tooth needs to be the same shape and same size in order for good quality cuts. If this tooth is too big, it's going to do more work. If this tooth is too small, it's not going to do any work. You're going to put the whole cutting load on one tooth if you don't get them consistent, which makes it outstanding for sharpening saw chain. The consistency is less important on the cutter bar. We'll scroll down a little bit. You can see some of these haven't closed yet versus the knives on the left, which have fully closed. That's not going to make a performance different like it does with the chainsaw chain. As long as they close, that's the important part. We want the reciprocating action to bypass the other tooth, and that's what gives us a cut. It doesn't matter if this one's open and this one's closed, as long as they're all closing. The principle is a little bit different from saw chain, where consistency is important and everything's working evenly. When you're hedging shrubs and twigs, it could care less if this guy's still open and this guy's closed, as long as it closes. Well, who's going to use one of these? Who's going to benefit and who's going to make the money? If you're good at wearing blue jeans to work, you'll probably get by with an angle grinder just fine. This got me by for years back when I had to send a crew out using this stuff. But a person's going to have to sharpen some hedger blades to recover your cost on this thing. A lot of shops used to provide kind of a gratuity service on stuff like this. They would sharpen the blades for a low cost, like 30 bucks. But those gratuities are long gone. It's rare to see that service anymore today. If it doesn't make money, the shop doesn't do it. There's a few challenges using it on customer equipment. There's some disassembly, and you never know what you're going to find when you start taking things apart. There's several screws and nuts that got to come off. They could be missing or stripped. There's a few bushings that are needed. They could be missing. They can be worn out. There can be other components that need to be repaired or replaced. The gearbox often needs maintenance or service. Do you grease it? Do you clean it? The Stihl manual says once you take the bar apart, you got to clean the bars real good. You got to degrease it and de-resin it. Pitch and resin and junk will get stuck on the cutter bar. If you don't get all of that off, it doesn't go back together very well. So you might be getting yourself into a whole can of cleaner to get one of these to shine back up to go together. By the time you do all that, sharpen it and reassemble it, and it's an hour job. There's no other way around it. It's a 1 hour job per machine. This machine's no short of adjustments. There's a lot of adjustments that got to be made, but there's something to be said about the quality. The results are first class. It provided the best quality sharpening you can get on one of these. I don't think you're going to be able to beat the results that this machine provides. So as a shop, I would sell it on that idea alone. Nothing beats this quality. This is the best. Something like this can be used to set yourself apart from other shops. You can use it for marketing reasons to bring business into the shop. Tell your customers, if you ever have any hedger repair, let us do the repair, and while it's apart we can do the sharpening. We can do a first-class sharpening job for you. But nonetheless, it is the #1 sharpener on the market. I don't think anything could beat this as far as quality of a sharpening job. It's definitely a first-class machine.